Hey, my name is Drew Dodds and I work as a product manager here at RudderStack. And today I would like to show you a new feature we just released called Cursor Column Support for reverse ETL. This offers a more efficient way to sync data from your source tables to your downstream destinations. In order to show the value add of this feature, I would like to show you a current state reverse ETL job without this feature enabled, and then show you with what this looks like when this feature is enabled and how to enable it within your workspace. So if I come here within this demo workspace here, you can see that I have a source table here, user table, which contains user records, and I'm sending that downstream to a Google Sheet called a users table. If I look within this Google Sheet, you can see that we have 481 customer records. So now I'm going to actually insert two new records, two new users within this users table. We did have 481. Now we have 483. So let's perform another sync. I'll come back into our control plane here, go to our reverse ETL screen here and click sync now. This is going to pick up the deltas. In this case, there should be 2, and the sync should not take long. You can see that we picked up the 2 deltas here, and you can see that the sync completed with no failures. If I come back into my Google Sheet, we can also see that the 2 new records or the 2 new users were added to the sheet. Now let's come over to Snowflake and go in our query history and take a look at this. So let me refresh this. And you can see there's a number of different queries that were just issued in general just to manage the syncs, but one in particular we want to pay attention to is this one. And you can see that it scanned 118 kilobytes of data. So if I go into this query, if you look into this query, you'll see that we are comparing the current state of this source table versus the previous snapshot state that RudderStack creates on your first full sync. And then you can see here that we're actually performing a diff on all the different columns. Even though this is an upsert sync type, this can become expensive for very large tables. So that is why we want to actually use and enable the cursor column in this case. So now I'm going to come back into RudderStack, go to my connections page, and I'm going to create a new connection to a new Google Sheet, except in this case, I'm going to create a cursor column and enable a new full sync, and then insert the 2 new records into that source table once again, and then perform an incremental sync, and then take a look at the difference in the query that was issued. So I'm going to go back into my source table here and add a new destination. This is going to be another Google Sheet. I'll just call this one cursor column. I'm going to add in my credentials here and my sheet ID. Perform the mapping. Okay, I have the mapping set up. And let me make sure my sheet ID is in here. And here, we're going to input the sheet name. Okay, so here is where we will enable and specify the cursor column. Cursor column is only supported in the sync mode upsert. You can see beneath that, it says use cursor column. So I'm going to enable that, and then I'm going to pick the column we want to use. And this is always going to be some sort of a timestamp column. In this case, I'm going to choose timestamp. Okay, and then here's an example payload that we'll send. So I'll click continue, and I'll go ahead and enable this sync here. So we're going to perform a full sync, and after that we'll perform a delta sync. And then I'll show you the difference in the queries. So let's sync now. Let's send the data to this Google Sheet. This will send the initial 481 records. So you can see we're getting 481 there. That's how much is in the table currently. And it completed. Let's take a look at our table here. Okay, and we have our 481 records. Now let's insert those 2 new records again. So now we have 483. So let's send this delta sync here. You can see that it picked up the delta here and completed with no failures. Let's verify that. Here's our 2 new records. Now let's go back into Snowflake and take a look at our query history. You can see here, this is the query we're using to extract the new records, and it is much less byte scanned. And you can see within this query, we are time capping it based on that checkpoint or the cursor column enabled in the previous setup configuration screen. So you can see here, you can run more cost-effective queries in order to infer the changes to be synced by leveraging this cursor column. Reach out to our team if you need any help or support with this. Thanks.